Texas is blocking federal agents from processing migrants in a public area of Eagle Pass, just a mile away from the U.S.-Mexico border.
People who are coming across the border are far more dangerous.
Recently, the Federal Bureau of Investigation stumbled upon an unprecedented discovery along the U.S.-Mexico border. The immense implications of this revelation have the power to reshape our understanding of border challenges. What is this terrifying discovery all about? And how does it fare with the affairs of the United States? Join us in today's video as we uncover the terrifying discovery made by the FBI on the U.S.-Mexico border. The discovery of migrants crossing the U.S.-Mexico border illegally. The recent discovery from the Federal Bureau of Investigation centers around an astonishing video footage captured by Fox News reporters Greg Weiner and Bill Milligan, showing a group of migrants crossing the U.S.-Mexico border illegally. Filmed in Jacumba, which is located in the eastern part of San Diego County near the California-Mexico border, the video shows the many problems that border enforcement agencies face. The video starts with two large SUVs arriving near the border with a group of migrants who leave the cars and cross the border on foot illegally, bypassing legal channels. With Texas tightening its border control efforts, the U.S.-Mexico Border Patrol's San Diego sector has been grappling with a surge in border crossings, including the events depicted in the video. The migrants persistently proceeded towards the border wall that separates the United States from Mexico as the camera records their journey. On reaching the end of the wall section, the migrants made a quick turn and made their way into the United States. Surprisingly, there is only one Border Patrol agent in the area, with the San Diego sector experiencing nearly 1,100 Border Patrol apprehensions on that Sunday alone, according to United States Customs and Border Protection sources. Among them were 97 Chinese nationals and 991 Turkish nationals. The migrants in the group come from diverse countries, including China, Turkey, Brazil, and India. This situation raises concerns among former FBI officials who have warned of a surge in military-age foreign nationals entering the country and the urgency of addressing this growing crisis. For countless migrants, legal channels to enter the United States are often inaccessible or limited. The lack of job opportunities, extreme poverty, and rampant violence in their home countries prompt these individuals to risk everything for a better life. The statistics reveal staggering poverty rates in some of these countries, with millions living in difficult conditions. Unemployment rates are shockingly high, offering little hope for economic stability. Besides, the presence of violence and organized crime worsens migrants' challenges. Meanwhile, crossing the border illegally is not an easy task. The migrants must navigate treacherous terrains, from vast deserts to rugged mountains and perilous rivers. In their journey, they endure extreme weather conditions and physical exhaustion, with many dying on the way due to dehydration, heat stroke, or hypothermia. Thousands of migrant deaths have been recorded along the U.S.-Mexican border in recent years. For those who manage to evade natural hazards and Border Patrol agents, the risk of detention, deportation, and separation from loved ones remains high. Detention centers are usually overcrowded and under-resourced. That leads to migrants being subjected to physical and emotional abuse, forced labor, and even sexual exploitation by human traffickers who prey on their desperation. In spite of all these challenges, some migrants who successfully enter the United States start a better life. Unprecedented surge in migrants crossing U.S.-Mexico border. The surge in migrants crossing the U.S.-Mexico border in recent years has become a significant concern for both countries. The reasons behind the mass migration are complex, stemming from a myriad of political, economic, and social factors. One of the key driving forces behind the massive influx of migrants is the dire economic situations in their home countries. Take Venezuela, for example. The country has been grappling with a severe economic crisis characterized by hyperinflation, food and medicine shortages, and political chaos. According to the World Bank, nearly 94% of Venezuelans were living in poverty in 2020. This prompted thousands to flee their country in search of better economic prospects. Violence also plays a crucial role in the decision to leave. In Mexico, drug cartels continue to hold sway, with high levels of killings and kidnappings affecting communities, leading to a surge of individuals leaving in search of safety in the United States. Gang violence is also frequent in Central American nations, like El Salvador, where citizens experience a high murder rate, making it one of the most violent countries in the world. The promise of economic prosperity family reunification, and the perception of lenient immigration policies also attracts some migrants to risk everything and make the dangerous journey to the United States. With family unity visas limited and the lengthy waiting periods, migrants feel compelled to cross the border illegally to reunite with their families. The combination of economic hardship, violence, and climate change creates a perfect storm that pushes individuals and families to make the difficult decision to leave everything behind and embark on a perilous journey to the United States. They are willing to face the risks and uncertainties of the journey because the alternative is simply unbearable. Moreover, in recent years, Central America has experienced a series of devastating natural disasters, which has been made worse by climate change. Hurricanes, droughts, and floods have wreaked havoc on the region, destroying crops, killing livestock, and leaving communities without food or income. This environmental devastation adds to the already dire economic conditions, further fueling the desire to migrate in search of stability and a chance to rebuild their lives. Subsequently, it is important to note that addressing the root causes of migration requires a comprehensive approach. Simply fortifying borders or implementing stricter immigration policies will not solve the underlying issues that drive individuals and families to leave their homes. A holistic strategy that tackles economic inequalities, violence, climate change, and provides viable alternatives for a better life is needed to address the complex challenges posed by mass migration. For many migrants, the desire to reunite with their loved ones who have already embarked on the journey is a deep-rooted motivator. The allure of building a brighter future together and escaping the hardships of their home countries propels individuals to take immense risks and embark on the challenging path to migration. This desire for family reunification serves as a significant driving force behind the surge in the number of migrants crossing the border. However, apart from the influence of familial ties, the influence of social media and technology cannot be understated in this era of globalization. In today's world, information travels with lightning speed, and migrants are becoming increasingly aware of the boundless possibilities and opportunities that await them in the United States. Through captivating images and inspiring stories of successful journeys and prosperous lives, migrants find their aspirations ignited, and that drives them to take a leap of faith and assume the risks associated with migration. The rise of social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp has turned into virtual gathering places for migrants. This has provided them with a unique platform to share invaluable insights, exchange tips, and extend support to one another. These online communities serve as essential resources for those meticulously planning their journeys, offering indispensable guidance on routes, modes of transportation, and even potential pitfalls to be avoided. Through the power of technology, the migration landscape has undergone a remarkable change, making it significantly easier for individuals to connect with one another and plan their respective journeys. Nevertheless, it is important to acknowledge that not all migrants crossing the US-Mexico border are driven solely by economic or family-related reasons. A substantial number of individuals are seeking refuge and asylum, desperately fleeing persecution, violence, and political instability that have enveloped their home countries. The deadly risks faced by migrants at the US-Mexico border. The US-Mexico border is filled with risks and dangers for migrants eager to enter the United States. The perils that await them along this path are dire, and the reasons behind the staggering number of deaths and disappearances are nothing short of shocking. One of the primary factors contributing to the deadliness of the border is the harsh and unforgiving desert terrain. Spanning the US-Mexico border are the Sonoran and Chihuahuan deserts, known for their extreme challenges. The blistering temperatures, often exceeding 38 degrees Celsius, pose a significant threat to those venturing across. Dehydration, heat stroke, and exhaustion become constant companions, and without access to water and shelter, many migrants succumb to these unfriendly conditions. Moreover, the absence of visible landmarks and navigational aids presents a bewildering situation for migrants, making it easy for them to become disoriented and lost. Struggling to find their way, they often unknowingly circle back, prolonging their exposure to the elements and enhancing the perils they face. Another shocking prevalent cause of death along the border is the widespread presence of human smuggling and trafficking. In their desperate pursuit of reaching the United States, migrants often turn to smugglers who promise to guide them across the border. However, these smugglers are often devoid of scruples, and have little regard for the safety and welfare of the migrants under their charge. Migrants are herded into overcrowded and perilous vehicles, compelled to endure long and treacherous journeys. In some tragic instances, these vehicles break down in the middle of the desert, leaving migrants stranded without sustenance, hydration, or any means of contacting help. Inside these cramped vehicles, the absence of proper ventilation and the extreme temperatures can swiftly give rise to heat exhaustion and even fatalities. Furthermore, the inherent danger of the border acts as a beacon for criminal organizations involved in drug trafficking and various other illicit activities. These organizations exert control over the routes and territories along the border, further heightening the perilous nature of the journey for migrants. They exploit the vulnerability of these individuals, subjecting them to violence, abuse, and exploitation, turning their pursuit of a better life into a nightmarish ordeal. The U.S.-Mexico border poses a significant challenge for law enforcement agencies, including the U.S. Border Patrol, tasked with maintaining border security and preventing unauthorized crossings. Their objective includes rescuing individuals in distress, but the vastness of the border and its demanding terrain make their efforts incredibly challenging. Despite their dedicated efforts, it is impossible for them to reach every migrant in need, leading to devastating consequences. It is important to acknowledge that the reported number of migrant deaths along the U.S.-Mexico border is likely an underestimate. Due to missing data and the difficulties of accurately documenting deaths in remote and inaccessible areas, the true scale of this tragedy remains unknown. Amidst the danger that migrants face along the U.S.-Mexico border, organizations and agencies have responded by striving to address the dire conditions and provide safer alternatives for those seeking a better future. Recognizing the urgent need for action, various stakeholders have taken steps to mitigate the risks and advocate for safe and regular migration routes. The International Organization for Migration has played a significant role in these efforts, occupying the forefront of addressing the challenges migrants face along this border. Through their data collection on migrant deaths and disappearances, they provide essential information to policymakers and stakeholders. Over time, Michelle Klein-Solomon, Regional Director for Central and North America and the Caribbean at the International Organization for Migration, has been seen emphasizing the criticality of countries taking action based on the available data to establish secure and regular migration routes. This involves investing in infrastructure, establishing humanitarian corridors, and providing support to migrants in transit. By creating accessible pathways, the risks associated with unauthorized border crossings can be significantly diminished. It is important that we strive to understand the complexities of the issue at hand, working collectively to find comprehensive solutions that prioritize the safety and well-being of migrants. A committed and concerted effort is necessary to alleviate the harrowing circumstances faced by those seeking a better life and to ensure that their journeys are not fraught with danger and tragedy. Approach to migration. In recent years, there has been a growing recognition of the need for a comprehensive approach to migration that prioritizes human rights and addresses the root causes behind it. The United States, in collaboration with Mexico and other Central American countries, has implemented initiatives to tackle economic disparities, violence, and political instability that often drive individuals to undertake dangerous journeys in search of safety and opportunity. Recognizing that migration is not just a border issue, but rooted in complex socio-economic and political factors, the approach involves multifaceted efforts, development programs, job creation, strengthening regional governance, and security initiatives are being pursued to address these underlying causes effectively. By targeting the root causes, the aim is to dissuade individuals from embarking on perilous journeys across the border in the first place. Efforts to enhance search and rescue operations along the border have proven vital in saving countless lives and offering hope amid the tragedy. The U.S. Customs and Border Protection and other law enforcement agencies have made rescuing individuals in distress a crucial part of their mission. In fiscal year 22 alone, there were 7,113 rescue incidents and 22,700 migrants rescued. These commendable efforts demonstrate the dedication and commitment towards protecting vulnerable individuals. Meanwhile, law enforcement agencies face significant challenges in their mission to protect and rescue migrants. The vastness of the border, the harsh terrain, and the involvement of criminal organizations make their task incredibly difficult. Despite their tireless efforts, it proves impossible to reach every migrant in need, resulting in many tragic deaths in the unforgiving desert. Recognizing and understanding these challenges is crucial in finding effective and sustainable solutions. To address these challenges effectively, increased collaboration and coordination among countries, international organizations, and civil society are essential. Sharing information, resources, and best practices can lead to a more efficient response to the humanitarian crisis at the border. Additionally, holding accountable those involved in human smuggling and trafficking and offering support and protection to survivors are key components of this collaborative approach. Furthermore, there is a need for improved data collection and reporting on migrant deaths. The Government Accountability Office's finding that Customs and Border Protection has not collected and reported complete data on migrant deaths underscores the importance of accurate and comprehensive information. By understanding the true scale of the tragedy, policymakers can make informed decisions and allocate resources accordingly, with the aim of ensuring effective and targeted responses. Criminal violence in Mexico. Being a country renowned for its vibrant culture, rich history, and breathtaking landscapes, Mexico is unfortunately plagued by an epidemic of criminal violence. Since 2018, an alarming number of lives, over 30,000 each year, have been lost to this pervasive issue. How did Mexico find itself in the grip of such brutality? To understand the present, we must delve into the past. In the 1980s, criminal groups and drug traffickers in Mexico began organizing themselves, delineating regional areas of control and trafficking routes. Initially, their activities were moderately contained. However, as production and distribution escalated, so did their hunger for power and control. These criminal organizations, commonly known as cartels, engaged in territorial battles and rivalry for access to profitable markets. This cutthroat competition unleashed a surge of violence, transforming the nation from relative tranquility to a battleground. The impact of this violence cannot be underestimated. Families torn asunder, communities stricken with fear, and a nation grappling with far-reaching consequences. The scars inflicted on Mexican society may take generations to heal. Criminal violence in Mexico has left a harrowing trail of victims, with civilians bearing the brunt of its brutality. Kidnappings, disappearances, and other abhorrent crimes have become distressingly commonplace. The state's efforts to combat these criminal organizations have, at times, resulted in human rights violations, further compounding the challenges faced. The effects of this violence extend beyond Mexico's borders. Desperate to flee the horrors of their homeland, many individuals resort to illegal migration to the United States in search of safety and better opportunities. The cartels responsible for much of the violence also play a significant role in the drug trade, smuggling narcotics across the border and contributing to a devastating drug overdose epidemic in the United States. The interconnection between criminal violence in Mexico and the migration crisis cannot be understated. The violence forces people to flee their homes in search of safety, while drug flows across the border contribute to addiction and crime in the United States. This vicious cycle perpetuates suffering in both nations, calling for a deep exploration of the issues at hand. In 2006, former President Felipe Calderón declared war on criminal organizations, implementing a military-led initiative to combat drug cartels. The goal was to dismantle these networks and restore peace. However, unintended consequences arose. Violent clashes with cartels led to the emergence of rival factions, vying for power and escalating the violence. The landscape became fragmented and more challenging to navigate. In 2012, President Enrique Peña reevaluated the government's strategy. Shifting the focus away from violent exchanges, the administration aimed to enhance law enforcement capabilities and support public safety. Despite initial improvements, Mexico continued to grapple with corruption and crime-related violence. Homicides related to drugs increased, culminating in the shocking discovery of a mass grave in Veracruz state, with over 250 victims. In addition, Andrés Manuel López Obrador emerged as a presidential candidate, offering a different approach to the fight against cartels. Andrés Manuel López Obrador's campaign emphasized poverty alleviation programs, marijuana legalization, and revamped sentencing guidelines for drug traffickers. The goal was to tackle the root causes of violence, rather than relying solely on force. Fortunately, his victory in the 2018 elections marked a new era for Mexico. Upon taking office, he established the National Guard, a hybrid civilian police and military force, to combat cartels. The deployment of this force to the southern border aimed to curtail migration, aligning with a deal with the United States. However, these efforts have fallen short, with crime-related deaths still exceeding 30,000 annually. Critics argue that Andrés Manuel López Obrador's approach fails to address the fundamental issues driving criminal violence, including the lingering influence of cartels, inadequate law enforcement, and deep-rooted corruption. Subsequently, Mexico's 2021 midterm elections were marred by violence, reflecting the ongoing struggle against criminal organizations. Attacks on journalists reached unprecedented levels, and anti-corruption reforms have faced obstacles. Critics point to the power and influence of cartels, the ineffectiveness of law enforcement, and sustained corruption as major hindrances to progress. Meanwhile, the Mexican government's difficulty in combating criminal violence not only endangers its citizens, but also weakens its position as a regional partner to the United States. Subscribers Pick. Now it's time for our subscribers pick. The FBI's terrifying discovery on the US-Mexico border changes everything. This image of migrants in the US-Mexico border seems alarming as they keep increasing in numbers often. Considering these individuals, one might wonder if it's the US government that is permitting their entry or vice versa. Furthermore, it becomes apparent that the Federal Bureau of Investigation and other law enforcement agencies are limited in their ability to address this recurring border issue. With this in mind, what do you think about this astounding revelation unfolding at the US-Mexico border that is sending shockwaves throughout the nation? Share your thoughts in the comments section below as we continue with the video. The effect of the border crisis in the upcoming election. In recent months, the US-Mexico border has become a contentious political battleground, with significant implications for President Biden's re-election campaign. The surge in illegal border crossings has presented a multifaceted challenge, intensifying scrutiny on the administration's immigration policies and fueling a divisive national conversation. The statistics paint a troubling picture. In the month of November 2023, the southern border witnessed nearly 250,000 attempts at illegal crossings, placing an unprecedented strain on border security resources. The backlog of asylum cases has reached record levels, with the majority of migrants being released into the United States as they await adjudication. This influx has further overwhelmed an already strained immigration system. Since taking office, President Biden has overseen a staggering 3.1 million border crossings, surpassing the population of major American cities such as Chicago. This unprecedented surge has resulted in overcrowded detention centers and overwhelmed immigration courts, raising doubts about the administration's ability to effectively manage the crisis. Frustrated with what they perceive as inaction from the Democratic administration, Republican governors have resorted to unconventional measures. They have funded the transportation of migrants to locations governed by Democrats, effectively shifting some border-related challenges northward. This strategy not only highlights the regionalization of the issue, but also erodes public trust in the Democratic Party's capability to handle border security. The US-Mexico border crisis has far-reaching consequences for President Biden's bid for re-election. The surge in illegal border crossings and the challenges it poses to the administration's immigration policies have become focal points of political debates. Critics argue that the administration's response has been inadequate and has resulted in an unsustainable burden on border security resources. Demographic changes concerning migrants crossing the United States border have made the immigration crisis more complicated. A significant proportion of migrants are now coming from countries beyond Mexico and Central America, such as Venezuela, Russia, India, and China, making the crisis a global issue rather than simply a regional one. The United States faces further challenges when dealing with migrants who are denied entry and cannot be returned, with countries such as China refusing to repatriate their nationals. This leaves the United States with a growing number of individuals who cannot be returned and adds pressure to the immigration system. The tight labor market in the United States contributes to the incentive for illegal immigration, but President Biden's policy shifts have also been identified as a catalyst for the surge. Several immigration policies were reversed, such as halting border wall construction and abandoning the Remain in Mexico policy, which has further complicated the issue. Although President Biden has quietly adopted some of his predecessors' policies, such as filling gaps in the border wall and implementing stricter measures for asylum seekers who attempt to cross undetected, these moves have gone largely unnoticed. This may reflect the administration's hesitance to draw attention to a policy shift that does not align with its party's broader narrative. The political landscape has become even more complicated with the pairing of a stringent immigration bill with Ukraine's war funding. This move, seen as an attempt to link unrelated issues creates pressure and opportunities for negotiation, but mistrust between parties impedes progress. Republicans and Democrats have different views on how to address the crisis, with Republicans being wary of allocating more funds to an administration they doubt will enforce immigration laws, and Democrats view some Republican demands as potential traps and weapons against President Biden. As the border crisis intensifies, the consequences for President Biden's re-election prospects become increasingly dire. The perception of a potential Trump victory could trigger a surge in border crossing attempts before his potential inauguration. Therefore, President Biden must act swiftly and decisively in addressing the border crisis. Failure to do so may cost him his re-election, with potential repercussions extending beyond the nation's borders. What President Biden has to say about the border crisis. President Joe Biden's recent stance on shutting down the U.S.-Mexico border has its origins in a complex negotiation process influenced by both domestic and international politics. This multifaceted situation began with Biden's need for ongoing funding for Ukraine in the face of Russia's invasion, which is strategically crucial for United States foreign policy. Initially, Senate Republicans indicated their willingness to provide additional funds for Ukraine, but only if it was part of a broader agreement addressing border security. As negotiations progressed, Biden began embracing efforts to achieve a bipartisan border security deal, a departure from years of stalemate on immigration reform. However, Biden's statement about shutting down the border if Congress passed the proposed deal seems more like a political maneuver than a genuine policy stance. Biden's tough rhetoric on border security is driven by his desire to counter criticism of his handling of migration at the border, particularly as immigration becomes an increasingly concerning issue leading up to the next presidential election. By taking a strong position on border security, Biden hopes to appeal to voters who are worried about the influx of migrants. But what would a border shutdown under the proposed deal actually entail? Contrary to popular belief, it would not completely halt trade or the movement of citizens and legal residents. Biden refers to an expulsion authority that lawmakers are negotiating, which would come into effect when illegal crossings exceed an average of 5,000 over 5 days across the southern border. Currently, the border sees up to 10,000 crossings per day. This authority would temporarily suspend asylum screenings for those crossing the border illegally. However, migrants would still be able to apply for asylum at ports of entry until crossings decrease below 3,750 per day. It is important to note that these numbers are estimates, and the final figures are yet to be determined. Meanwhile, efforts are underway to streamline the asylum process, aiming to reduce resolution times to 6 months and raise the standards for asylum applications. This is intended to address the backlog of cases and prevent abuse of the system. Interestingly, Biden's adoption of tough border language echoes the rhetoric of former President Donald Trump. Trump had also promised to shut down the U.S.-Mexico border entirely, including trade and traffic, as a means to pressure Mexico to address migration issues. However, he did not follow through on this promise. Despite previous criticism of Trump's border policies, Biden's adoption of similar language reflects the increasing public concern about illegal migration. Nonetheless, this stance risks alienating progressives who believe that Biden has veered too far right on border policies. They argue that a more compassionate approach focusing on humanitarian aid and comprehensive immigration reform is needed. Regarding the authority to shut down the border, House Speaker Mike Johnson, a Trump ally and critic of the proposed deal, argues that presidents already possess sufficient power to control illegal border crossings. While Biden could theoretically limit asylum claims and restrict crossings, such actions would likely face legal challenges and may require congressional legislation for lasting impact. The White House has called on Congress to take action and provide the necessary policy changes and funding. However, the outlook for the proposed deal remains uncertain. A core group of senators negotiating the deal had hoped to release detailed text, but conservatives are already expressing dissatisfaction, claiming that the measures are not stringent enough in curtailing immigration. In a letter to colleagues, Johnson aligned himself with hardline conservatives determined to block the compromise, stating that the legislation would be dead on arrival in the House if leaked reports about it were true. As negotiations near their conclusion, Republicans appear to be retracting their previous support for border security, citing the upcoming presidential election as a reason for their change of heart. Trump, in particular, is determined to prevent Biden from achieving a victory on an issue central to his successful 2016 campaign, as he himself contemplates a return to the White House. Biden's efforts to address the border situation have faced various challenges. While some policies have shown success, such as the reduction in asylum case resolution times, the number of border crossings continues to rise. The fate of the proposed deal remains uncertain, with its prospects subject to political calculations and changing alliances. As negotiations for the proposed deal approach a critical point, the outcome will have significant implications for immigration policy and the future of border security. Thank you for watching this video. See you in the next one.